Hey guys, this is Vince Miller. I'm excited you're joining us today. Today we're looking at the topic 4 self-defeating thoughts that all men have. Now, before we dive in, real quick, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button below so you can get notified when new videos come out in this series. And I believe you're going to want to get informed so that you don't miss out. Also, do me another favor. As always, head over to my website today. That's beresolute.org. Resolute.org, and do a couple of things for me while you're over there. Number one, just check out our resources, our gear, but especially if I was to choose one thing to do, I would make sure to encourage you to sign up for the Men's Daily Devotional. I write these short, sweet, to-the-point devotionals for men just like you every single day. We just take a look at a short text from the Bible, a little thought, actionable, and a prayer that I believe will help get your day going on a regular basis. So pick that up today. It is free, 100% free. But with that, let's dive into the topic for today. It is this 4 self-defeating thoughts that all men have. Now guys, I talk to men across the planet all the time about many of the issues that they're facing, and I notice these certain patterns over time. Today we're going to be looking at 4 self-defeating thoughts that I think are prominent among Christian men today, and actually what you can do about them. As I have seen men struggle in life with issues, I have noticed there's these patterns of self-defeating thoughts that sometimes can become very debilitating for men. So today we're going to look at 4 of them, really some of the core issues and what we can do together to overcome them. Here's self-defeating thought number 1. It's this: I will never be good enough, so why bother trying? I will never be good enough, so why try? Now, this by far is the greatest self-defeating thought that I think most men have. And here are the core issues that surround this thought. It's things like guilt or fear or shame that stem from a real mistake or a sin, or maybe even an ongoing repetitive failure that men have experienced in life. And these actually happen, and we have these thoughts, and here's an action plan I would suggest for a man who has this self-defeating thought. Number 1, you've got to avoid cycling in secret self-pity, right? Here's a fact. No one knows that you're doing this or having this thought. It is only you that's having this thought. And by the way, it's not helpful if you're ruminating on it time and time again, especially if you're cycling on it in some strange form of penance called self-pity. No one knows that you are doing this, so stop cycling in secret. You just have to stop it, and you have to stop it yourself. Number 2, you should own your problems, right? You should own your problems. But you got to remember this: you are not the cause of all your problems. That's what happens in these cycles of self-pity when we have these self-defeating thoughts. All of a sudden, everything becomes your issue. And by the way, a little bit of guilt is good to create change and momentum in a man's life. But the more that we cycle on it, we get stuck in perpetual cycles of shame. Therefore, what we're doing is not just owning our problems, we're owning everybody else's problems as well. You are not the cause of all your problems, but own your problems, but not all of them, especially if they're not yours. 3, I would encourage you, if you're having this self-defeating thought, to move through the emotional gridlock. You know, sometimes men are afraid to, or even embarrassed or ashamed to admit that they actually have emotions, that they feel hurt or sad or confused or stuck, right, emotionally. Well, guess what? Sometimes we do fall off the emotional horse, but we have to get back on it again. And therefore, to move through that emotional gridlock, we've got to mature through these emotions. We can't just stay stuck in them perpetually. So please move through that emotional gridlock. Push yourself to move through it. And then 4th, you have to remember this. This is so important. Live in your new identity in Christ. We have to remember that you are a new man, even though sometimes you're going to make mistakes and the voices of the old man or the memory of the old man is going to want to come back. we got to remember that in Christ we are a new man. That's what we are. Here's a verse I would memorize if you have this self-defeating thought. It is actually from 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 17. If this is your self-defeating thought, you need to memorize these words. It reads this way: therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a what? New creation. That's what he is. He's a new creation. The old has passed away, behold, the new has come. Did you hear that? The old has passed away, behold, the new has come. This is a great word for you guys that have this self-defeating thought. That's 2 Corinthians 5, verse 17. Here's self-defeating thought number 2. I am tired and confused, and I just don't know what to do. I am tired and confused, and I just don't know what to do. Now, this self-defeating thought raises core issues for us of things like confusion that usually come from this need to have knowledge that we don't have or clarity that we don't have, that combine itself with these feelings of this like great incompetence as men. Now, I know these are real core issues. Sometimes we are truly confused. Sometimes we need knowledge and clarity, and sometimes we do feel incompetent. But to move through this, here's what you need to do. Number 1, you need to clarify the capabilities that you think that you need. You need to clarify the capabilities that you think that you need. Yeah, we all have capability gaps, I call it. Gaps between the man that we are and the man that we want to be and the capabilities that get us there, right? So you got to start clarifying the capabilities that you actually think that you need. If you're tired and confused, well, you must need some capability. Secondly, here's what I would do. I would ask someone to mentor you in the desired capabilities that you think that you need. Because by the way, there's probably some other man out there that you know who's been through the same issues that you're walking through, that they've walked through and can hand you some wisdom that you need, right? This is why I beat mentoring like a dead horse, is because it is the greatest pro bono system for getting anything that you ever wanted in your life, and all you got to do is ask someone to step in your life and show you how to do that thing. And just anything. I mean, I ask men to help me all the time in understanding how to do certain things that I don't know how to do. And sometimes they end up doing it for me when I ask them to do it, right? Which is a huge service and a help to me when I don't have the capabilities. Third, I would define simple and measurable goals toward reaching that needed capability. Simple and measurable goals. Now, sometimes the capabilities that we need feel like they're very far reaching and very far off. I understand that. But if we can just make things simple and measurable toward reaching that capability, eventually we'll get there. Next, I would mark progress towards those goals. And then next after that, I would make adjustments along the way. Because I promise it's not going to work out exactly like you think it's going to work out when you feel that you lack that clarity and that knowledge and those capabilities. But you got to make adjustments, and you got to trust God's sovereignty in the process. So here's a verse for you guys that have this self-defeating thought. It's from Proverbs chapter 1, verse 7. Classic verse. Really helps us to tune in to God and His knowledge. Here's what it says. It says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise the wisdom and instruction that they need. Never forget that. Self-defeating thought number 3. I am too overwhelmed. I'll just address it later. I am too overwhelmed. I'll address it later. Now, the core issue here is obvious, is it not? It's procrastination that actually stems, I think, from being overwhelmed or personally irritated. We have all been there, right? So we just kind of want to put something off, and this becomes a very self-defeating thought. Here's an action plan for you guys that have this thought today. Number 1. Start doing something. Just anything. You know, the right moment is never going to come for you to address that problem. You're just going to have to start. Even if it's a bad start, it's a start. Do something. Number 2, I would do this. I would go public with your decision to do something. Here's why. It compels action. You know, if I tell my wife that I'm putting something off, or I tell a friend that I need to do something that I haven't done, man, it compels me to do something about it because now I've said something publicly about it, right? It just compels action. Number 3, and this is super important, now that you've gone public, be willing to get accountability or invite accountability to help, because it ensures that you're going to move forward. I think sometimes that when we go public with it, we have to remember that going public is only part of the answer. We now have to invite that person to say to us, will you check back in with me in a couple of days? Just check back in, to invite them into the process. And that means that you do the inviting, not them holding you accountable, you holding yourself accountable by inviting them to check in with you in a day or so to see if you've made some steps toward the process, right? And then finally, and this is super important, I think we always forget this, this is kind of the soft part of moving through this. It's being transparent with others about how you feel or why you're putting it off. You know, when we put things off and we procrastinate and we have these self-defeating thoughts, there are certain feelings that we have about that moment. Maybe something that we're scared about, ashamed about, concerned about, that we need to be talking about, by the way, because there's a reason that we're putting it off. It ain't just about getting accountability and about going public with other things. It's about addressing the deeper core issues that are happening inside of our emotional self and our mental self that are keeping us from moving forward. So address those as well. Here's a verse for you. It's Ephesians 5, verse 15. It's great. Listen to this. He says, look carefully then how you walk. So in other words, how you live, right? Not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time because the days are evil. You fellas got to make best use of your time because guess what? Days are evil. And these self-defeating thoughts are, by the way, evil. And they're going to keep you from making forward progress. And you ain't got a lot of time to walk in this life is what it's saying. So you got to walk carefully. You got to look carefully, not as unwise, but as wise, making best use of your time. And then finally, self-defeating thought number 4. I hope this will just go away so I don't have to deal with it. I hope this will just go away so I don't have to deal with it. Now, core issues here are really a failure to take responsibility, a failure to lean into challenges. It is sheer avoidance and fear of change. And I understand it. It is a very real voice that we hear, a very real self-defeating thought. But fellas, here's an action plan for you. Number 1. You need to identify what you're avoiding and why you're avoiding it. Seriously, you probably just need to get a pen, a piece of paper, and set it down. You need to sit down at a table and you need to think about that question. Identify what you're avoiding and why you're avoiding it. And the why is so important because it's the why that's holding you back. Next, and this is super important, this is even more important than the last one, I would actually write down the future ramifications or impacts of you not taking responsibility with this issue. What is going to happen if you don't deal with this issue? You don't deal with this issue with your sin or in your marriage or in your relationships or in your career. What's going to happen if you don't deal with this thing, right? Think about that. That might motivate you to action. Next, or third, I would use the phrase, if necessary, and there's certain phrases that are going to move you to action. Phrases like, I'm sorry, or I'm angry, or I'm irritated, and start opening up the dialogue around this thing. You can't just ruminate on this in your mind. You got to open up to somebody else about this. Next, again, very important to take it to the next step here. Maybe you need to seek reconciliation in relationships. You know, sometimes these ruminating thoughts and these self-defeating thoughts ruminate on us because there's something relational that we need to deal with. And fellas, if you take that step of reconciliation, restoration, and healing in relationships, it will cause the self-defeating thought to dissipate in your life. And then finally, remember this. Take one step at a time. Don't worry about taking all the steps. Just one step. Do the next right thing. All these self-defeating thoughts and issues inside of this particular relationship that you're affected by right now that's causing this rumination is not going to be undone with just one step. Sometimes it's going to take many steps over a long period of time. I would say to you today, just do the next right thing and that's it. And here's a verse for you to memorize. It is from Ephesians chapter 4, verse 27, classic verse. Do not let the sun go down on your anger and give no opportunity to the devil. Do not let the sun go down on your anger. In other words, don't let too much time go so that you don't deal with the things that are going on inside and don't give opportunity to the devil. Well, fellas, there are the 4 predominant self-defeating thoughts that I see from men across the planet. I would encourage you to push through this season of your life if you're having one of these thoughts, and use this action plan to kind of move through it in a spiritual sense, and ask God to give you help along the way. You see the themes here. It's inviting God to help. It's being open and honest about what you need, who you want to be. It's allowing the rumination to end. It's getting back up emotionally. It is moving forward. Those are the things. I would encourage you to do this with me. And fellas, I'll see you right back here next time. Until then, remember this: live all in for Him who lived all in.